What is up, everybody, and welcome to another exciting installment of the Qué Golazo podcast on our YouTube page. I'm Jimmy Conrad alongside Heath Pearce, your two favorite former U.S. men's national team players. We've got some bonus content for you, the extra stuff here on YouTube only. So make sure you hit that subscribe button, leave some comments, let us know what you want to hear from us as it pertains, especially to the U.S. men's national team. We want to give you a lot of bonus coverage in this particular area. There's a lot to discuss, of course. And the topic, Heath, that I want to get into is the fringe players, the guys that are on the bubble, looking to burst in and make a difference in the first team for the U.S. men's national team in our road to qualifying for the World Cup in 2022. And I've got three names for you, okay? One is Joe Scally, playing at Borussia Mönchengladbach, Chris Richards at Hoffenheim, and Josh Sargent at Norwich. Now they've had some experience with the national team, and some have not. And I wanted to know if you thought these three should be included. Let's just say the November window coming up with our home game against Mexico and our away game against Jamaica. Do you think they should be included in the team? And if so, who do they replace, Heath Pearce? I'm putting you on the spot.
Oh, man. Wildly enough, by the way, Chris Richards subbed in the, I think it was the first half for an injury when he came back to Hoffenheim after the international break. Very short turnaround. That was a Friday game. So he must have played, that was a Wednesday, must have gotten back on match day, I would guess. But either way,
He's a robot. He's a robot.
Showing the importance. I think Joe Scally is one where, again, over the weekend played in a wing back position at the right side. He's played left and right back in a full back four backline system, now showing that he can play as a wing back. He's one that I just want in because I saw it before. Everybody wanted Conrad de la Fuente. When he came in first against Wales, he struggled a little bit, didn't look quite ready. Then came back in. He showed glimpses that he's nearly at the international level, and we're going to see some more consistency as he goes. If you've watched Joe Scally, which I've watched him quite a bit, there's nothing remarkable about his game, but he's a young player that's getting valuable minutes for a big club in the Bundesliga, that is Borussia Mönchengladbach, and contributing to those results. He recently, I believe, scored a goal in the league, and he's one that I think has to be called into camp because of his form. You can look at team cohesion, you can look at whatever, but when you're bringing in 26 players and you're rotating as much as you are in the way that Gregg Berhalter is rotating, you have no excuse not to bring in a player that's in the form that he's in, right? And I think that he challenges the defenders that are currently being called in now. I think when you look at Shaq Moore, when you look at George Bello, I don't think they're quite there yet. I think they were good over the summer, but the more they're being tested, the more that I'm seeing the work that they need to do. Could be the same case with Joe Scally, but the fact is you've got to give him also now a chance to be in camp, to compete in training. You're talking about only 2 matches in the next window, so perhaps you have more training days with the team to be able to see kind of how they develop or have a few competitive sessions. As you know, those double ones, you have usually a Tuesday or a Wednesday where you can get a decent session in, or Tuesday and a Wednesday between games or before you go into those games that you can have a decent session in to see the guys and see their level. So that's one that I definitely want to see brought in, period. I'm not saying he has to play. And then Josh Sargent, this is the hard one for me because I think Josh Sargent might be 4 or 5 on my depth chart right now in terms of what he brings to this national team. Now, I think Josh Sargent traditionally could have done well in our away qualifiers and things like that. But when I look at a Daryl DK and what he could bring to an away qualifier, Jordan Pefok, what he could bring into an away qualifier, and this has always been my fear. We were always so excited. Actually, I saw a tweet today about could Gyasi Zardes play in the Premier League? But the framing of the question, Jimmy, is what failed. What failed. Could Gyasi Zardes play in the Premier League? Yes, of course he could. A number of our guys could play in the Premier League. Josh Sargent can play in the Premier League. But when you're a striker, it doesn't matter what league you play in. You're brought in to contribute either scoring goals or setting up goals or be in and around that lead to goals, right? The next level of stats, which are like how many goals can he create for his team that aren't necessarily from his foot, from his runs, from his movement, from all these things, being impactful. And when I think about Josh Sargent in the national team, I compare him to the other guys that I think can be more impactful over 90 minutes if we're not measuring them just on scoring. What's your take on those three?
Yeah, I guess I'll just work backwards and say with Josh Sargent in particular, obviously missed a big chance on this weekend, open net, and he just didn't hit it hard enough. Maybe he just overthought it in that moment. Just like, let's just roll it in. I don't want to miss it wide. Don't want to miss it high. And he just didn't give it enough oomph, which would have been nice, I think, for him to get that first goal. In
Is
the
that a
league
sign?
that
Is that a sign of confidence? Lack of
I
confidence?
think it is
for
a
you?
sign of confidence for sure. But he got himself in a great spot, and he does a lot of that thankless running. So when he got that opportunity and fell to his feet, I'm like, that's very Josh Sargent, to find himself in that spot. But he did lack a little bit of that confidence to finish it off, and that's a shame because I think we're all pulling for him to get back into the team and be competitive and help push everybody else along. With regard to I'll stay on Sargent. I'd love to see Daryl Dike get another run out, and I like that we have the possibility, not that we will do it, but that we could go to 2 strikers and that one of them could drop into midfield and make a difference. And I think that needs to be looked at and considered as well, that if we are playing a team and they are sitting in the low block, that we could throw on 2 strikers and it wouldn't throw us off too much.
Would it be Sargent if you had to have your second striker now? Would he be your, like, based on a 2 striker system? Would Sargent be your other guy, or do you
potentially
Pepe, or would it be?
Well, it's a good question. I think that what Sargent does well is that he runs the channels and stretches a team. And so that could open up more space for Pepe to play underneath and look to combine. So there could be a partnership there. The thing is, I don't think we're going to try it enough. So I feel like we're running into hypotheticals that will never, ever bear fruit. That said, though, when we're down in a game and we need to throw more attacking players on, it's nice to have these options and it's nice to know. That said, there's not going to be any stretching of defenses there with Josh Sargent. If a team has got a lead and they've got, 10 guys behind the ball, you need players that can actually look to combine. Not to say that Sargent can't do it, but at that point, I think you're throwing bigger bodies in to get on the end of crosses, which is where I think Pfolk and Daryl Dike and even Zardes could be more service to us. So that'll be interesting to see what he does with Sargent and if he brings them in. Because if he stops, this is my fear for some of these players. They were part of our team, had success, felt like they were part of it, and now they're slowly getting squeezed out. And how are they going to respond to that? And ultimately, that's always the test of a professional, because there's nowhere a straight line where you just go A to B and everything's going great for you the whole way up. Like, there's going to be downs and going to be ups, and that's just how it goes. You just hope that downs and ups keep kind of going in that upward trajectory. That's kind of the key. And
that's a positive sign for our national team, though. If we've got a guy 100%. Who plays in the Premier League and isn't a shoe-in for a call-up, we would have, like 10 years ago, we would have been like, Josie Altidore at Hull, if he's not scoring, we're still like, yeah, but he's at the Premier League. This is amazing. This guy's fantastic, and he's young.
I know.
Like, that would be enough. But
that's how I felt about. That's what I felt about Jordan Pfolk. The guy just scored against Manchester United in the Champions League, and he can't even get a call in. So, yeah, it really speaks to that point in particular. Now, speaking of, let's go to Joe Scally now. I actually think we missed an opportunity not to bring him into this last window because we can call in so many players. It's less about seeing him play, which I think would have been nice, I think, for the coaching staff just to have him around, and even with those light trainings that they would have, just to see what he was about. But more importantly, just get him involved with the group. Let him see and get a taste. Go to Panama, man. Put him in the stands. You and I have both had opportunities of being in the stands. We didn't make the 18, so we had to go sit in the stands for a World Cup qualifier. I did it in Trinidad back in the day. You did it in Panama or Honduras or wherever Costa Rica or wherever you've done it. And there's some value to gain from that. And you get to see how players prepare, and you get to see what the atmosphere is like. And it does help you ease into that transition when you're actually out there on the field trying to make plays.
You know what it also does, Jimmy? It makes you hungrier because you know you're close and not quite there. You know that somebody's been selected. You know you're being seen, so you're validated because you've been brought in. But you know there's another step to get to that pitch. And when you're close, you feel that sort of like, oh man, I'm not in the locker room. I'm not part of this, but I'm close. I know there's something like it's a motivator, which I think can be huge. And we've seen players that get brought into camp, and then you see them sort of take that next leap, or other ones that can't rise to the occasion.
No, it's a great point. Well, I'll say about Joe Scally. So they play away to Hertha before the next window. They play away to Bayern, home to Bayern in the DFB Pokal. They play home to Bochum, and then they got Mainz away, which is not an easy game. We saw RB Leipzig lose there a little bit earlier this season, first game of the season. So if he plays well in those games, and honestly, if he plays well and Berhalter doesn't call him in, it almost feels personal at this point. I'll make it feel personal for him, and I'm going to be his conduit for that. So let's move to Chris Richards then. When I think about him, what's interesting about Chris Richards is that we're still missing. John Anthony Brooks didn't play this last window with back spasms. Tim Ream was out due to family reasons. Hopefully everything's okay. And then you still have this guy that had a lot of minutes anytime he played. He's been out with an Achilles injury, Aaron Long, who I think will probably factor back in. So there are some question marks in this spot as to who are our best 2 center backs at the moment. And I think that Chris Richards,
John Anthony Brooks did play again this weekend, by the way. So he's back on the field, healthy.
Yeah. Back spasms is always an interesting injury for me because I don't really buy it. So I kind of wonder if there was some issues from his club about flying all that way, getting those games, is he going to play all the games? You know, there might have been something going. Honestly, I think there might be something there, but because back spasms is so random. Like, yeah, my back hurts all the time, dude. It hurt when I was a player too. So
it hasn't not spasmed since I was 20. You know?
Exactly. So it's an interesting one. So I don't know if there was more of like a quarantine issue that Wolfsburg was having. There might have been something.
It's a good point. It's a good point. Everything's a conspiracy now, which is why.
Of course, we're on the internet. That's what we're supposed to do. We're on the internet. So with Chris Richards and just the position in particular, I would bring him back in. I think he warrants another look, especially after being pretty solid against Costa Rica. But now you have these other guys that'll be coming back in that are just as hungry to kind of prove themselves again. So again, these are all great problems to have. So I guess my final question to you, Heath, is what do these players need to do, in your humble opinion, to be named to Jamaica or the Mexico and Jamaica window in November?
Joe Scally just needs to keep playing. I think he's making himself his presence felt, presence known amongst the fans. I think all fans now are just sort of asking, when you go into a game where you play poorly against Panama, especially your fullbacks, you say, hey, we've got this guy playing in the Bundesliga in a high stress, high pressure environment. He should be able to be in this camp competing. Now, again, I think we missed that window. I think it's hard as this team start to gain more shape. You actually want to start to say, hey, we had 26 in here. Only 19 are part of this team. 6 are on the outskirts, because we need room to be able to work a Joe Scally in. If you make that 26 too secure on players that are going to rotate in and out, it makes it really hard to bring in a Joe Scally and you play him away in the next big away game. And that can be a big challenge, right? Throw him into the fire and it hasn't had a chance to play a home game or integrate into the team. I think that's tough. And so I think they need to whittle down the team generally so that you can actually have room for guys that are informed to come back in and not have it be a disruptor where, you know, we've kind of got our group and we don't know how, if one has to come in, one has to go out and all of that. So I think for him, I think for Chris Richards, again, if he continues to play the way that he's playing in the Bundesliga right now, Hoffenheim's a massive club and he's playing well. I don't think that makes him a sure starter, because I think John Anthony Brooks, if he comes back in the next camp, is your starter. And then you got to figure out who's next to him. Well, I think is Robinson is best suited next to him to play next to Brooks. But if he doesn't, that's where I'm like, man, there's actually a decent shout that Chris Richards could be that guy, because he warrants another look. And perhaps you take that into the circumstances of playing in those 2 games. Maybe Chris Richards gets one of those games. I would play 8 at least of the same 11 in your first 2 games. If you have all your players fit and healthy, you play your best 8 of your 11, which is maybe that'll be another bonus episode that we'll do on how to build the team.
Please don't make big changes from game to game.
In 2 games versus 3, I think that's a huge conversation starter. But overall, I think for Joe Scally, you have to bring him in if he continues to play, whether he's playing at the level that you think he's not, or he fits within the national team or not. He's playing at a level and on a team that warrants a call up and at least a look in one of the next 2 games, or at least in one of the next 2 windows. If you bring him in for both, he should be getting a cap at some point. And then Richard, same thing. And Josh Sargent is one where I'm like, you got to take a look at the personnel and say, it gets down to strikers at a certain point when we talk about all the strikers in the past. Gregg Berhalter has to have a gut feeling onto why he's bringing in Josh Sargent, because his performances aren't doing it. He's not scoring the goals. And you've got 4 or 5 players that all, quote unquote, deserve to be called into the national team. And unfortunately, that's just not the way it works with the national team. So there has to be a valid reason on how you plan to use him. Like you said, could it be a 2-striker system? Could it be something that he feels or some look that he sees against an opponent that's opponent-based that makes sense? Otherwise, I just don't see the reason to bring him in unless he's on a scoring tear between now and then.
All right, Heath Pearce, I appreciate all of your insights. And everybody watching, of course, this has been a lot of fun. We're going to have a lot of bonus content for you around the U.S. men's national team. So drop your comments after you hit the subscribe button, letting us know what you want to hear from us about, what topic around the U.S. men's national team and World Cup qualifying. Could be about Mexico, could be about anybody in CONCACAF. We're happy to get into it and even bring on a special guest to get into it as well. So we appreciate you again watching, and please follow the Qué Golazo podcast on Twitter at Qué Golazo Pod. Subscribe to the Qué Golazo page on YouTube, as I just mentioned, and hit the notification bell so you never miss our beautiful faces anytime we're going live or on one of these videos talking about it. And of course, subscribe to Qué Golazo wherever you get your podcasts. Thank you so much, Heath.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, everybody. We'll see you soon.